All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined as always by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. Okay. Well, I think we've survived the climate crisis, right?
Heat wave over, back to normal. Yeah, I tell you what, I think that the heat of summer is broken here. I don't know that we will see any more 90-degree days, or at least
yeah,
not very many.
yeah. I'm curious about that myself. I mean, we've got what, high 80s this week or mid 80s.
Mid 80s, lows down around 60. So
That's really nice.
that swimming pool water is going to start to cool off a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it actually can be a little nippy at night as a result of that. But it's nice to be able to walk outside my house when I go to the gym in the morning. It's like, okay, we're probably at the level there where it drops a few more degrees. I might actually have to put a jacket on.
Yeah, it was like down. It was like 59 or so last night here.
Yeah. My wife loves this kind of thing. I mean, cooler temperatures and lower humidity make for a much more pleasant morning walk. So
Yeah,
it's good for her. But the mornings almost feel fall like as a result of
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
So
it's definitely September weather here, or September, October,
yeah,
early October weather here.
right. That's what I was thinking. It's just like I think like it's August, but boy, it does feel kind of September, October-ish, in the morning, which is good because I think we've got a bunch of people coming over our house on Saturday, and I think I might need to cut the grass again so it looks decent. I'm like, if the temperatures are going to be in the 70s when I do that, that's a heck of a lot better than being in the 90s when I do it.
Absolutely, I can take it out of you. The other thing is, before we leave this topic, okay, that was creating hysteria to force public policy change, right? Um, every summer somebody sets a temperature record. Somebody has a hot summer and their temperatures are unlike they've ever been before. Somewhere on Earth, that happens every summer, right? But like the whole eastern 2/3 of America had a or third eastern half of America had a cooler than normal summer. Canada has had a cooler. They've had wildfires, but because it's been cool and dry, they've had a cooler than normal summer. Last winter, China, Russia, U.S. mainland all had their lowest temperatures ever. Right now in Antarctica, they're having their coldest temperature, coldest weather in 10, 15 years. And the bottom of the world places that also gets really cold this time of year are having a really severe winter. So, when you say when you bring that up to people, they're like, but the overall trend. I'm like, okay, the overall trend has to include the places that aren't warm, right? I mean, there's some places that are hot, but the overall trend has to, we're all part of the overall trend. I think the thing is, someone told me this a long time ago, and the longer it goes on, the more I think about it is there's really no such thing as climate, right? Climate is, there's weather, right? And you can say, I guess you could say, obviously the climate in Texas is hotter than the climate in Virginia. Okay, fair enough, right? But the idea that like these things happen as a result of climate change, and we need to, stop eating. John Kerry, I don't know if you saw this week, but he was actually talking about, agriculture is going to have to change. Agriculture is a third of the emissions. And so we can't have that third of the emissions. So, I mean, what are you talking about? In Ireland, they're talking about killing 150,000 cows because of their farts are global warming or whatever, right? I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, people are doing crazy nutbag things for something that doesn't even really exist, right? The whole thing is kind of a made up scam. So I don't know. It's
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right about that. I mean, it just this is this whole thing, this politicization, by the left, by these nutty liberals, environmentalists that, it's like around every corner there is some danger, right? Yeah, cows have emissions, okay, methane gas kind of thing. It's like, we've this country has lived like this forever.
Yeah, and also all the other countries, right? We're
Right? Yeah,
fine.
yeah. I mean, is India going to slaughter all their cows? Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and it's like, people have to eat too, right?
Right.
People have to eat. You're going to have food for the people. And we've done a real good job, especially the last 50 years, of really cutting deeply into world hunger. Like when we were kids, it was a lot bigger problem than it is. And it's probably less than half the problem it was then, and we've done that by, we figured out a way to, produce it efficiently, truck it wherever we want it, and deliver it, make it useful to people, keep it refrigerated, all that. All those things are, it's stuff we've been doing in our country for a while, but it's new to the other parts of the world. So they're talking about, I mean, this is crazy stuff, and this is our climate envoy. He's I guess, ostensibly he's he's voicing administration policy. So does Joe Biden have it in for the entire, farm and agriculture industry in the U.S.? Somebody needs to ask that question.
Yeah, it's like, like everything else that they have done. It's like, so you're forcing us into these alternatives, but you don't really have a good answer for the alternatives, because the alternatives aren't really all that good to begin with. They have their own issues. So exactly what we're supposed to do. But I mean, I think you made a really good point here on this, on the whole food chain kind of a thing like that, because it did, I'm going through my memory, and I remember, being younger, when watching television, which I have watched way too much of in my life, the constant, the commercials about, help the hungry in the third world,
Right.
various countries. You really don't see a lot of that anymore. I mean, I think it goes to your point. I mean, we've made such strides and such progress. There are pockets, there are places in the world where there's still issues, for
Oh,
various
absolutely.
reasons. But by and large, we have made such significant strides, and we have been teaching, taking the methodology and teaching countries how to grow crops and grow food in their climates and their, under their weather conditions, and try to figure out how to change, how to take, non-arable land and still figure out a way to make that productive.
Right.
So it's, it's like a lot of things. We're never going to me, I'm not sure we're ever going to solve this stuff 100%, but we've made a lot of progress.
Right. And, they complain about the carbon, right? First of all, there's no evidence that carbon is the control knob on the temperature. More carbon does not necessarily equal hotter weather. It may, but it may not, right? So it's not really what's controlling it. But the carbon is making it greener, right? The earth, it's easier to grow things here. It's easier to be productive with the land because of the carbon, the added carbon.
Yeah, and that's part of it. I mean, it's just like there are, you can be this ardent environmentalist and say, all these things are bad for the environment, and it's going to, accelerate the end of the world and all this kind of stuff. But you can't, you really logically cannot deny that there are, like everything else, there are some positive effects of some of these things that are happening. That we are able to do some things we weren't able to do 10 or 15 years ago. The world changes, things change,
Right.
and but there's a lot of this legislative change that they want to force down our throats. But once again, and what's the cost of this? I mean,
Yeah.
what
And you have no idea whether it'll work
right?
or if it'll work the right amount. It's like, I guess the Biden administration is talking about spraying something in the air that will make it, make the less sun make it to Earth or whatever. It's like, what if that works? What if they do that and the sun can't get here? I mean, what you don't want is us freezing to death, right? We'll deal with a couple of hot weeks in the summer. You don't want us freezing to death. A lot more people die from cold than die from heat.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a huge movement on food onto, more plant-based foods. But as we've seen, if it comes to saying like the Beyond Meat, the type of things like that, one of the problems there is that product is actually not all that healthy,
Right.
because they use so much sodium in there.
Yeah.
So where are all your health wars? Where are the Michelle Obamas of the world saying, but look at that. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's great that we're not, killing a cow per se for that burger, but the amount of sodium we have to put into this and other things we have to put into this process to make this work might kill you faster.
Right. That's right. That's right. But I mean, but the thing is, they're also, pretty publicly stating that one of their policy goals is population reduction. The other thing when Kerry was talking about uh, uh, doing something about food, he was also talking about, we just went over 8 billion people, and quote, something has to be done about that. Like, what, John? What are we doing? We're going to kill a billion so we get numbers we like? I mean, what's your plan here? So, I don't know. I think that, I mean, it sounds good in theory, right? If you sit down with someone, and it's like, I've always, it's like the trickle down economics, right? When they first started talking about this back in the Reagan administration, right? I thought at that time, a lot of the popularity of it was, it was explainable and understandable. And then people thought, hey, I know an economic theory, and I know like the opposing economic theory. So I'm kind of an economically literate guy, and now, right. And so now it's like, I know a little environmental science, and I know a little, I understand a little bit about the troposphere. I'm a little smarter than you think, right? But it's like, you didn't really have the whole picture of trickle down economics. Well, we've gone back and fixed some of our assumptions of that. It was, for instance, trade. Now you can't, the first thought was, of that was, remove all barriers to trade, establish all the trade agreements we could, let those people have access to our markets, right? Because most of those trade deals, it's not really about us getting access to their markets. It's more about how they are going to get access to ours, right? So now we've kind of hollowed out some towns that were factory towns that got wiped out by our trade policy, so we've changed how we look at trade. So you go through these things that get adjusted. They don't stay the same, and they shouldn't stay the same. But, on this one, it's like we're hell bent on, this must be destroyed. We must reduce our carbon footprint and whatnot, and that's the only way out of this, and it's like, well, first of all, what is it we are in that we need to get out? Because it's not, the Earth overall is not really hotter than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago. The sea level rise thing, it's like, here's the thing about that. I was thinking about this last night. So it's not just that sea level is not rising as fast as they predicted, right? It's that, we were told, New York was going to be underwater by 2000. Miami was going to be underwater by 2015, right? All these other places were going to be underwater. It's not just that they're not underwater. It's that there's no real progress been made toward them going underwater. Like you see these, like one of the things the right wingers put up now is they put up a picture of the Statue of Liberty from 100 years ago and a picture from the Statue of Liberty now. And it's the same. Nothing's happened to the bottom of the statue. They're not, you would think if this was the problem they said it was, we wouldn't be at zero gain, right? We would not, part of, you could say, okay, it's not 20 feet of water in New York City. It's only 3 feet, but it's growing. But it's not 3 feet. It's not even 3 inches. It's 3 nothing, right? We're exactly where we were. Like, you can't even measure the difference. So, this gradual thing that's gradually destroying us, it's not doing anything. So there's no gradual destruction. So why are we making policy, as if something is true that's not materializing?
Yeah, as you talk about, we've got to reduce the footprint, and we've got to keep the population down. I mean, this all, remember, the whole zero population growth, clamoring and things like this. But look at what's happening in the world today. The United States, Asia in particular, South Korea, Japan, Europe, all these, these areas, the replacement, numbers are way down. They're now and they're in a really bad spot. Those countries are aging. The young people are, they're not getting married, and they're not repopulating the country.
Right.
And this is a problem. I mean, there's always talk about Social Security here, which has always been based on having X number of workers, people in the workforce supporting the retiree, the people in the system. Well, that number, it continues to shrink, and that's not a good thing for the way the system was designed.
Right.
For people like John Kerry and others that say, we've got, we have too many people or whatever. It's like, around the corner, there's going to be some problems here if you continue on this path.
Right. And Japanese already having big problems. They closed about half their schools in the last 25 years because, there's no one to go to them. There's, they're losing youth population. I saw you had on your list. There was a study that said boys are more conservative and girls are more liberal.
A high school, high school study.
High school, right. So, I saw one a couple weeks ago that said that the people coming out of high school now are the most conservative cohort in the last 30 years. So, they're, I don't know like how it measured out the boys and the girls, but the thing about it is like, from what I can tell of high school, and I had, my daughter just graduated, my son's still there. Like when I was in high school, I went to an all boys high school, and like the number one priority, the number 1 through 600 priority was girls, right? So, it's like, how do we get noticed since we don't go to school with them, and sure enough, like school ended at 2:10 for St. Vincent's, which was the girls' school up the street, and 2:15 for us. So guess what? The driving time is about 5 minutes. And when you would get out, sure enough, we were noticed by girls just ambling by the school in their cars, right? So, but high school was, trying to get noticed and get dates, and, that doesn't seem to interest them much anymore. The whole courtship ritual of high school, it's like, the things that happen with the homecoming courts, right? Because it used to be, the quarterback's dating the homecoming queen, and, all that was like, that was part of high school, was these MAGA, I don't want to say MAGA, mega couples that, came about and so forth. One of our queens, or maybe she wasn't the queen, she was is married to our quarterback from when I was in high school. They got married, pretty soon after high school. I think they went to college and got married while they were in college, and are still married. So, it did happen back then, but now there's no, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal to be the quarterback anymore. It doesn't seem like, it's not 1 through 600 priority of the boys anymore to meet girls, so, the girls are less of a priority. So, the girls their bargaining position has changed, right? Because boys are not seeking them out the way they were. And, I think porn has a lot to do with this too. Boys watch the porn. They lose that, like, that girl's paid to say yes to all that, right? She won't necessarily do it without the money. So, you're going up to some girl and, giving the same kind of commands, she's like, well, I'm not a prostitute and I'm not interested in you, so like the whole, talk to them a while and get closer and then ask them for a date, blah, blah, blah. That's not getting modeled enough for people to understand how to do it. Right. The ritual has changed completely. You wouldn't recognize it.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into all of that. I mean, I think, social media has created a different kind of culture. I mean, for teens, I mean, they really don't know the people on social media unless they know them through their high school, right, whether or not these people are really real or not. I mean, how much of this, all these predatory things have gone on there. Parents, you've got to be very careful these days. The world is really different, but I think you're right. I mean, you don't see, or at least I don't see, evidence of a lot of the high school, sweetheart courtships, winding up in marriage. I don't see a lot of those, period. You've got some people dating in high school, but I guess it isn't like it was, back in the day, as we would say. It's just very, very different. And the guys will do stuff together, the girls will do stuff together now, and
right. Or there's these big groups where
right.
there's dozens of them. But that's
Right.
I mean, that's sort of borrowing from an old idea, but it's not the same. Drinking down in high school, drug use, illegal drug use down in high school, teen pregnancy way down. But
Yeah, I think
that's right. That's quite possible, Jill. Uh, uh, all that stuff is down, right? When we were in school, it's like we got to do something about the drinking, drugs, and teen pregnancy. Well, it's been done, but I'm not sure we're in better shape.
Yeah, I mean, now people, kids that were old enough to drink, or even those are maybe not, they would find a way to sneak into places, underage drinking and stuff like that. Nowadays, there's so much of this clubbing, culture that goes on and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of mind blowing for me to see, how different things really are. Dating is tough. Relationships are very hard. I mean, I see enough of this with those young missionaries that I spend a heck of a lot of time with over an 18-month to 2-year period. When they're done and they go home, some of them have boyfriends or girlfriends waiting for them or whatever. They've rekindled that relationship now that they're back home. But a lot of them, it takes them a while before they find their footing and find the person that they want to marry and stuff like that.
And your guys are finding them way quicker than anybody else.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I mean, that is the one thing. I mean, those missionaries are now going out, 20 some years ago or whatever, it was 19 for the boys and 21 for the girls. And then, it got changed to 18 for the boys, 19 for the girls. That dynamic there changed the number of girls that went on missions. Those numbers exploded across the board. Now that they're only about a year apart on the when they go out there, it does tend to actually get them a lot closer post mission. That we've had a lot of them who are here in the DC area, that went back home, and 6 months later, a year later, they got married. And sometimes you're like, I never saw that one coming. I mean, I'm such an old fuddy-duddy. I don't really think about, person A and person B, would they be a good match or whatever. It's just, not in my wheelhouse or whatever. But, I mean, look, they're young people. There's going to be, sometimes the girls and guys see certain things, and they also get to see certain qualities while they're out there because because of the rules that they're under, are pretty strict. And then you never know how that's going to go. Later on, you date, you might get married. You date, you might not get married to somebody there, but it's almost like a starting point. But yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of marriages, right when the kids are in there, right around 2021. That's that there can be some challenges getting married that young, but if they share the same belief structure and some other things, they have other support systems in place, they make that work. I don't really know of many, if any, divorces, as even know that they got married at a very young age. They've grown together, they learn together. So it's just an interesting thing to see. But these liberals that got all hot and heavy about population reductions, like, well, we're seeing it happen as a result of a lot of different factors, and as a result of that, the United States as well as the other countries that are already in trouble. Look, I mentioned Japan, and you mentioned Japan as well. We have a good friend of ours. Her mother passed away. She's from Japan. Her mother passed away, I think, a couple of years ago, and she had a house there in a little city in Japan. And they've been holding on to that house, and she's gone back periodically to kind of maintain it and check on the status and things like that. But her mother lived in one of those towns where the population was aging, and as a result of that, it was naturally shrinking. So that this she just completed a trip, which was probably her final trip in terms for a long time, where she went back to her mom's house with the express purpose of cleaning it out and selling it. And she got the equivalent of about $10,000 for selling that little house. Um, because the thing is that most of the houses there had fallen into such disrepair. Most of the houses you can get in that town that are vacant go for nothing. You can't even sell your house in a lot of places because there's no demand for the house. Who the person who's spending $10,000 is still going to have to put some money into it to kind of fix it up and get some things done and stuff like that. But
that's what Fetterman was talking about. He lived in Bradford. He was mayor of Bradford, PA, which is right outside of Pittsburgh, and he bought his house for $16,000. That's pretty cheap for a house.
Yeah, well, when did he buy his house? Do you remember?
I don't remember, but it's not all that long ago, right? Maybe the last 10 years or so.
A little bit different than when my parents purchased their house in Maryland for what, $30,000 in 1965 or whatever it was. It's mind-boggling to think that there was a generation. Economics were different. I mean, the salaries were different too, but
right.
That $25,000 or $30,000 or whatever could buy a house, and that was a fairly good size house. If you wanted a smaller house, you paid $20,000 for it or $15,000.
My parents paid $13,300 in 1961.
Yeah,
for like 3-bedroom, then upstairs and all that. A house where you could have kids.
Yeah,
his payment was $89 a month.
Yeah, I have no idea what my father paid, but his mortgage was unbelievable, isn't it? Then to think about how different things are. I mean, inflation plays a part of it, but $89 and the price of that house, even if you take in inflation, is like it doesn't make sense.
It's nothing close to what I'm doing here. I can tell you.
Yeah, and so there are going to be things that we have to deal with along the lines. All right. We need to hit some other news here too. Okay. Hunter Biden, I don't know. I mean, this is how much of an albatross is he, for Joe Biden in this campaign? I mean, there's this talk about the Foreign Agent Registration Act. Was he really a foreign agent? You have this guy, Devin Archer, testifying behind closed doors. There's, and seemingly, contradictory statements, I guess, if you think about Biden about during the campaign. He's talking about Hunter didn't take any money from China and stuff like that. But there's definitely seems to be evidence that he had plenty of income from that, and obviously from Ukraine and Burisma and stuff like that. Was Joe lying in 2020, or was he just completely stupid about what Hunter was doing?
All right. Well, there's a few things I want to say about this. First is, Joe said on the campaign trail and repeatedly since that he did not have anything to do with Hunter's business, right? I think we've broken through that wall. I think it's pretty well established that he did have something to do. So, but that's a lie told on the campaign trail. The punishment for that is to elect his opponent in the next election. Right. We're going to go through campaigns and prosecute people for what they say on the campaign trail. We're gonna need federal prisons just for that. The evidence, Devin Archer, added some flavor to stuff. He puts Joe at meetings where Hunter was doing business, where there's the transcript of the call or the tape of the call where Hunter is saying, you guys aren't paying me, and I got my dad sitting here and he's upset and this needs to be taken care of tonight. Right. So he's clearly saying, don't make my dad angry. Right. It's not me. It's like, you don't want the vice president coming down on you. So, I mean, the idea, and of course the left runs out and says, Joe never talked to these people about business. He didn't do anything wrong. What is this witch hunt even about? it's about quite a lot. Then they have a lot of records. They have a lot of bank records of suspicious deposits. They have records of them receiving money they shouldn't be receiving. They have a lot of explaining to do, but their strategy is to just say, this is all nonsense and a witch hunt and all this stuff. And they've got the media believing it, or parroting it, whether they believe it or not. Who knows what they believe? So I think the key point of this is going to be Joe. There's the famous tape of Joe talking to the Council of Foreign Relations, where he says, he told the government of Ukraine if they didn't fire the prosecutor, they weren't going to get $1 billion aid package from the U.S. And they said, you can't do that. You're just the vice president. And he's like, call him. You can call him and ask him. Which is important because that means that Obama knew what Joe was going to do that day, right? Which is another thing we could go back and ask about and find out about later on. But it looks like Obama. I read something yesterday. Somebody said Obama was letting Joe do this stuff because he assumed Hillary would win and Joe would retire and Joe would have a nice little retirement fund, right? So, which does fit, check all the boxes, right? It doesn't. There's no evidence that says that's wrong. But anyway, so they go off and they fire a prosecutor, right? So the question is, the relevant question is that prosecutor, was he fired because he was looking into Burisma, which is the energy company that Joe was looking at? Hunter and Devin Archer were both on the board of. Or was he fired for not prosecuting, for refusing to prosecute? That's what Biden claims. They didn't, we got him fired for refusing to prosecute. Well, now you have evidence and some documents saying, no, he was fired because he was prosecuting. He was trying to get at this. There was a list somebody put out last night or the night before. He was the third prosecutor fired for looking into Burisma. All three replaced by prosecutors who came in and said, I see nothing wrong here, no charges, and moved along. So, the problem is, for them is you're going to have to come up with that person who says, yes, Shokin was fired for not, because he was going after Burisma. You turn that fact, you make that obvious. Joe's in a lot of trouble. They're pretty close to having the votes to impeach him now. And now, so the assumption is, Democrats control the Senate. You have to get the 2/3 to remove. They'll never remove. And I don't know about that because for a couple of reasons. One is, unlike Trump, where, they're cobbling together laws, they're using statutes in ways that were never intended to be used to concoct crimes to charge him with. This is fairly clear cut, right? It's bribery. We delivered policy outcomes. They gave money. There's shakedowns. There's records of, time to pay or you see, Rocco helps you find your checkbook, right? Or whatever. So, the three things you can be impeached for removed, right, are treason, bribery, high crimes and misdemeanors. And it's possible the Biden's hit all three. It's possible Joe hits all three. So if this gets to rolling downhill, there's an impeachment. The evidence is obvious. You have the witnesses saying, Shokin was fired because he was about to expose Joe's dirty business in Ukraine and so forth, right? If you get all that in place, would the Senate vote to remove? And I'm not sure that they wouldn't because, for one thing, it's a way to end it. For another, a lot of them have various levels of discomfort with the president. Elizabeth Warren's not a big fan. Bernie's not a big fan. All the people who were ordered to step aside in 2020 and let him win, right, in South Carolina, they sort of have a complaint, right? And plus, if Joe's removed, Kamala serves out what's left of his term. By the time it happens, that's probably a few months, right? And the field is clear, right? Instead of presumptive nominee, right? Which Joe is right now. Marianne Williamson is not going to catch him. John RFK Jr. is not going to catch him, right? The field's clear. Everybody can get in. They can all get in there and run again. So, if Joe thinks like his party is going to take care of him, like the Republicans took care of Trump, I think he may be sadly mistaken.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, we know that McCarthy was, they were on the verge of being able to start their inquiry. They're going to have that. I do think politically, I mean, as you get closer to the election year, I think there's some risks for the Republicans doing this, because I mean it does look like it's a political type of a thing like this. I love how
they would, but the Democrats went after Trump in year 3 of his, after the Mueller thing blew up for the first 2 years. They spent year 3 on the Ukraine call and year 4 on the last impeachment. So they sort of hurt themselves on that one.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats didn't do themselves any favors with their impeachment thing, because I mean, for them to go out and call all this stuff a witch hunt is kind of laughable, because that's all they did was witch hunt during the time that they had control of Congress. So but once again, goes back to what you were saying. You said many times, elections have consequences, right? Those in power can do this, and there's nothing legally wrong with that. I mean, they have the power, they have the votes, they can go and they can do that. They can abuse their power, they can do all these crazy things. Republicans will have to wait and see exactly how this could the Senate, take him out. I think what you said, it has to really roll downhill, and it has to be, it'll have to be a huge boulder rolling downhill and picking things up here, because I do, the Democrats in general are pretty unified. I mean, they stick together, because I am not convinced, unless you have this overwhelming evidence of things that that they can't deny, that even you get all the Republicans voting for it, because I still think you still have a few Republicans to me that are a little bit
I think there's 5 that they're worried about.
Yeah, so can they be offset? So I think that that's definitely a the 2/3, very very tough hill to to climb. Not impossible, but it will take a lot of things to go exactly, into place, to fall into place in order to make that happen. But I think you are right in the sense of, are the Democrats, I mean, I think this is obvious. We see poll after poll after poll. Biden, his popularity among the Democrats is not very high.
No.
Well, a lot of the Democrats are very uneasy about him being the nominee. We have this New York Times Siena poll. It says he and Trump are effectively tied. These are things that scare the Democrats. I mean, for heaven's sakes, Donald Trump just had his 3rd indictment. I mean,
right. They're not going to indict him out of this race. That's the other thing. Is like Biden's strategy for winning this was to throw enough legal stuff at Trump that he could not run or could not be effective. And he's thrown most of what he's capable of throwing, and he's not hurt Trump yet.
No, Trump has been able to use all of this to his advantage. I mean, I'm the victim. Those guys
they're coming after me. They're just they'll know I'll beat them.
The Justice Department out of control. This is this. Yeah. He uses this very effectively, and his base is there.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't. That base doesn't really waver. I know it frustrates the heck out of the never Trumpers and others, but it's undeniable that how many more of these. Look, if Georgia goes ahead and they go and they do their thing, I don't think it hurts Trump any more than anything else after this point in time. He has withstood all this. He has used it to his advantage. Biden. I mean, what has Biden got? Biden's got a lot. Biden's got Hunter and those issues dragging him down. He's got all those other questions around his involvement because of that, and he's got Kamala, who can't seem to talk, to string 2 or 3 decent sentences together without people going like, "What did she just say? What is she doing?"
There's a big campaign on their side to say hey, she's gotten to be pretty good at this. She's a good speaker.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's like who they wanted her to debate somebody the other day.
well, I mean,
Sanders.
DeSantis has challenged her to debate on the curriculum in Florida,
Yeah.
and she's like, I'm not going to do this because the truth is already out there, not being and known and stuff like this. But to me, this is
You
it's
would
not
get the floor mopped with you. That's the
right.
problem.
Look, I mean, this is obvious. I mean, there's no doubt that people around her is like,
Yeah.
you do not.
Yeah.
Think
of some reason to say no and do it now.
Okay? Considering how she can't string these sentences together, is that the last thing you want to do is have her debate something on any kind of substance level. Whatever you think about the curriculum, she will not be able. She will just get destroyed.
Yeah.
And it's obvious. I mean, I can't remember the name of the reporter that had that interview with her. And threw up the question from ABC about, her ratings. She's not exactly very popular, and her retort was like, "There are polls that show that I'm very popular," or something to that effect. I'm like, I want to see those polls and who they were conducted by.
Your mom does not count as a poll.
Yeah, right. The family poll. your staff poll or something like that, or whatever.
Well, I mean, she wouldn't do well on that one. Neither would Biden either. That's the other thing is, there's a couple stories lately about, they're trying to soften the blow of Americans are starting to realize that Biden, he's 80 years old. He's declining some. There's some decline on him. And he's gotten to where he forgets where he's going and what he's supposed to do. And they're sort of having to take care of him up there, to a greater degree than they want to let on. And, but when he gets mad, he just goes off on people and curses them into the ground and all this stuff. And so, there's a lot of unrest up there now, and they sort of try to stay away from him because he's volatile.
Yeah. I mean, look, you've got two guys that are very close in age, and there's no doubt that when you watch Joe, there's some definite issues there. But if we have Trump versus Biden in a rematch, and you start bringing up, if you go down that path about mental acuity, just the ability, the cognitive abilities, then you're basically forced to either vote for Trump or some third party person,
or sit it out or whatever, which is fine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because if you hate, I mean, I've said many times. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Trump. But look, I mean, Trump is as unhinged as he can be and as crazy as he can do things. He's still he's not he doesn't show any signs that he's got a mental disability.
Yeah, he's on the he's on the ball mentally. He's as sharp as he's ever been, and that's not true of Biden. They cannot argue that it is. I thought a big factor in the 2020 race was before the first debate. There was all this talk on our side. This guy's going to get up there and spit all over the stage and fumble and mumble and not remember his name, and then he got up there. Biden got up there, and there was a couple of times where it was like, ooh, but for the most part, he gave cogent answers to the questions and responded appropriately and talked when he was supposed to and didn't talk when he wasn't supposed to and so forth. And Trump did, right? Trump got into interrupted him and so forth because Trump wanted to force one of these moments. He was trying to get Biden to panic and show what he doesn't know, basically, But I mean, now can they do that again? Could he go 3 debates with Trump without losing his place and mumbling and saying things people don't understand? I don't know.
I mean, look, Trump doesn't even have to push him that hard, or whoever the Republican nominee won't have to push him that hard, because Biden on his own is somewhat self-destructing.
Right.
He's having a problem even following the script, right? So it's not hard to conceive that even with things going on there, and the thing about a debate is that you've got your talking points and things that you want to discuss, but you're going to be asked these questions. And you don't have a teleprompter with the answer spitting it back at you. You actually have to answer this. The amount of decline, I think that I think is pretty obvious to most people with Biden in these last few years is pretty stark. And so, debates are a huge, danger for the Democrats on this. Is
That's
that
right.
you're not putting your best candidate, forward if you're putting Biden on stage in a debate.
Right. And they
Trump.
would love to get out of it in a way that also gets them free of Kamala,
Yeah,
right? And impeachment does fit that bill. It's an ugly way to go, and forevermore, the only president removed is a Democrat, blah 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 blah. But it does clear the field for the other people, right?
yeah.
It
Look,
does take care of the problem.
right. I mean, look, even with Kamala, the when she has, I mean, they'll have at least one vice presidential debate type of thing like that. Whoever winds up on, being the VP nominee for the Republicans, unless you get somebody who's really, just green, just about anybody will be able to take on Kamala and destroy her. The thing now is that, Biden and Harris, they also have to run on their record, right? And that's also another problem for them. I mean, they have got so many challenges ahead of them. They're in, between Biden's inability to really get through things, and Kamala can't string together these sentences and, cogently and stuff like that. And their policies that they have enacted over the last 3 years, all the things that are coming, into play here.
Yeah. Oh
Are
yeah,
just,
gasoline up a quarter last week, right?
right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I was shocked. I mean, I can't quite figure out the gas prices where I live, because I've got this one Shell station that has actually been holding the line at 369. And when they were at 369, they were at the top end of where those stations were. And, we have an independent station. We have this Liberty, which you may have.
Right.
There may be some of those in Virginia, but,
Yeah.
everybody's always got something. And the Liberty has always generally been the low ball person,
Right.
outfit. Well, now I think Liberty, I think I passed by it the other day. I think they're at 383, and the Shell here is at 369. But I've got an Exxon around the corner that's at 409. But we've got this we're using this BP credit card thing, 50 cents off a gallon for the first 60 days. So I'm like furiously only going to BP, and so the one I go to,
$1 million credit card bill, but
well, there is a limit. I don't drive enough to actually,
right.
go anywhere near that. It is nice to see 50 cents go right off the pump there. But
definitely,
I mean, there was a
that.
point there where we were paying $2.99. And I just gassed up my wife's car the other day, and it was $3.24. There's 25 cents. That was 10 days. 10 days.
10 days. And so that's $3, $4 on the price of the gas, right?
I mean, yeah. So it's, but I'm just using this credit card deal. I'll be paying what every other chump is paying here, in the next 2 weeks. I think I've got less than 2 weeks to go on this deal. And then I'm doing this, but I'm like, when I'm seeing that Exxon, which has never been a cheap station anyway, but when I see them posting a price of over $4, that's a red flag to me. And I think about, how CNN in the past, it's like, well, gas prices have been right. There was a nickel last week, but we were paying $5 last year at this time. Well, we're creeping back up there, folks.
That's right. And
that,
that's the bottom of everybody's balance sheet, right? Is energy. So, if it goes up, then, the price of everything starts going back up, right?
Right.
And you're still twice the level of inflation when Trump left office. We're still at twice what it was.
Yeah. And
people don't understand. It's like, inflation is just the rate at which it's going up this month, right? It's not, the thing that went up last month and the month before and back when it was 9%. We're still paying all those, right? It's supposedly like 27% higher groceries now, and gasoline is, of course, about 50 or 60%, and then going up 70% maybe higher than when Joe took office. So I mean, he doesn't really have an economic story to tell. The polling, like you mentioned, he's 40 in one, 39 other. I checked Rasmussen this morning; he's at 47. So, who knows where that is? Generally, Rasmussen is they are more whoever's president's going to get a little higher rating from them than some of the other polls, just however they do it or whatever.
Yeah, so I know we're still early in this whole process and everything like this, but yeah, I mean, I think there are probably plenty of jittery Democrats looking at this team, thinking like this supposed dream team from 2020, where they thought they could get they'd get Kamala, just sliding in there after Joe was done. She's a huge liability for them too, and they now have two huge problems going for them in 2024. I mean, it wouldn't really take a complete implosion by the Republican nominee to lose this thing at least on paper, it seems at this point. I mean, the Republicans have got we saw the fundraising numbers from the PACs. DeSantis and Trump are they brought in some pretty big bucks, and Tim Scott. I mean, you've got Tim Scott. I mean, Burgum didn't. He put some money into his own campaign, but he's picked up some large checks. And hey, look, I think I told you. I think I did my Doug Burgum thing. I sent them $1 from me. I sent them $1 from my wife, and they sent us a link for a $20 Visa card. You can get it either by mail or you could get the email. It's like I turned the $20 Visa card, the first one, into a $20 Walmart gift card. Right
there, you go.
Now I'm getting and I didn't remove myself from the Burgum text thing because I'm kind of curious as to what he's doing. He's willing to spend money to stay in this thing and be a part of the conversation. I want to listen to the guy. I mean, I like the variety of what we've got out there, but I think I kind of like Mike Pence and Tim Scott. I just don't know. Pence didn't raise very much money. The question, it's going to take a miracle for him to get into this thing. I mean, I think right now, I don't think he even qualifies.
That's right.
On the polling for the first debate, and we're about what 2 or 3 weeks out from that thing.
24th, right?
Yeah, something like that. So we're getting close to this time where he's going to have to get his numbers up to qualify. If you're not on those debate stages, you're in trouble because the bar isn't really all that high. I mean, Burgum has been smart, and this guy, what's this guy named Perry Johnson? He's he's doing a $10, gas card for $1 contribution. I mean, I until the FEC says you can't do it, smart way of doing it, to go ahead and try to bring your donor numbers up, and then you got to figure out the polling and these other things.
Is Christie Is Christie made it, or do you know?
Yeah, Christie apparently is qualified. Yeah, for the debate, he's got he's got all the numbers in there. Yeah, so, I mean, Christie. I mean, we know pretty much all he's going to do is trash Trump. I mean, that's
it's like you really can't run the country like that, buddy.
He's not going to get, he's not going to get 4, 5, 6%, 10%. He's never, he's not going to get to these numbers unless other people drop out. But the attraction level of Chris Christie is very limited,
Right.
So
outside of the Acela corridor, virtually nil.
Yeah, so he's not going to get very far. So we'll see. And the RNC has raised the bar a little bit. They're increasing, I think, the polling numbers that you've got to have for the second debate, and you've got to have like 50,000 donors, and not 40,000 donors, and stuff like that. So Burgum may have been smart on this because he needed 40,000. They're giving away 50,000 of the $20 gift cards, and part of that was to have some cushion. But if I know he's past 40,000, he probably can hit the 50,000. I don't know if he can hit. I don't know if he's close enough to hit the higher polling numbers. But it's we could see Doug Burgum in second debate, and but Mike Pence, if he doesn't make the debate stage and for number one, he's got to make it for number two.
Right.
By that time, he's got to get his fundraising in gear and do it. But it's just there's a lot of people in there. I kind of I like to hear a little bit more of Tim Scott, and I don't mind listening to Nikki Haley, and let's see here what they've got. But I think right now it's a Trump DeSantis thing because they're raking in the bucks. But Trump's PACs, now part of their problem is like they've had to spend a ton of money on legal fees.
Right. which is part of the Biden plan, is to lead the campaign. But I don't know how much campaign money Trump actually needs, right? Because he's got some money and he's got a plane, and everywhere he goes, there are, zillions of people waiting to see him. So, I don't think advertising per se is a huge problem. The thing that they need money for is the RNC needs money to build out the organization, to make sure that we're watching every poll, and we're as into ballot harvesting and all that as the other side.
All right, so we're running low on time, so wrap it up quickly with your final comments.
Well, one thing is, like, the trade deadline went by yesterday in Major League Baseball.
You should be smiling.
Daddy came home. So I would say that, so the Astros got Justin Verlander for 2 minor league outfielders. One of them was, I think, our top prospect. We don't really have a lot of top prospects because we had 2 years. We didn't get any first or second round draft picks because of the banging on the trash cans thing. So, this is a point in Astros history where we don't really have much on the farm to trade anybody. And so we got him. We got a top right flight reliever for a minor league catcher. So, we did pretty good at the trade line. Dana Brown, who was here, worked for Rizzo for a long time, is now our general manager. Did a really good job of getting us those 2 pieces. But I think the story here is not really us; it's the Mets. So the Mets have sold probably 6 of their top 7 players in the last 3 or 4 days. They had the most expensive payroll in baseball. They're about 6 games below 500, and they just sold out. They just said, we're not going to win it like this, and got rid of all the players who were and pay. In the case of us and the Max Scherzer to the Rangers, they paid us to take these players off their hands. So they want done with it, and they're going to start from scratch. If I worked for the Mets in any capacity right now, I would not view myself as having a whole lot of job security.
Yeah, interesting trade deadline, and we'll see there. I mean, I think the Astros are likely to take the AL West. I think they can. They're about half a game behind the Rangers, and the Rangers are good, but I think the Astros, once they get all the rest of their players back, are much better.
Right, it's what Magic Johnson called winning time.
Yeah. This is it, and we've got 2 months here. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. As always, please stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world, and do not want to tell you otherwise. And God bless America, and we will see you again next week.